something that I tell my students a lot, even in smaller and more nuanced or detailed aspects of the plot. They might say, I really want the character to do this, or I'm writing a romance and I really want this to happen. And I just say, okay, so if you want that to happen, then reverse engineer. And where does it need to start? What's going to be the character journey where they start at the 180-degree before that and then eventually move to that place? So yeah, that's definitely a thing. And I don't know how many authors do that super purposefully, but I think it's something that we do subconsciously, and anyone who is an outliner probably does it a little bit more purposefully. I do think that different templates like the hero's journey or the virgin's promise or Save the Cat, Story Grid, all of those, I think they have a lot of value because they teach us about patterns that are in stories. And like you said at the beginning, when you were introducing me, I teach how to write stories from a psychological point of view, like story psychology and what I call the human template, how all human beings are wired to naturally absorb story. And so I think looking at these kinds of templates and identifying patterns within stories, especially, like you said, really popular stories, things like Star Wars and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings that a lot of people are really familiar with, it helps us to understand different aspects of story and to be able to tell better stories. All of that said, I'm not a big fan of using them to actually craft your story, at least not in the beginning, because by doing that, you're sort of starting on the outside and trying to force your story into a template, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you're more likely to write to a cliche if you do that. And the story is going to feel forced if you're just trying to force it into that template. I actually believe in writing stories from the inside out. So starting with the internal and really organically doing the thought process to figure out what kind of story you're telling, to figure out logically what's going to happen next, how your characters would react, things like that. But once you do that, you can also go back to those templates and use them as checks and balances and say, okay, this part of my story is sagging a little bit. It's a little bit boring. What am I missing? And then you can maybe find beats that you didn't think to put in along the way. So I think it all works together and you can use them to really check yourself and write really, really strong and cohesive stories.